It's easy to get confused when discussing how movies convey a story to an audience. For one thing, the terms involved are practically identical, and their meanings are all interrelated, all of which makes them seem deceptively similar. So let's clear things up a bit. Basically, the narrative is the story. Narration is the act of telling the story. The narrator is who or what tells the story. In other words, the narrator delivers the narration that conveys the narrative. Of course, to make things just a bit more complicated, there are different kinds of narrators and narration. Narration can be delivered in different ways by different kinds of narrators, often within the same movie. For starters, in every movie, the camera is the primary narrator. The camera tells us the story. Its narration consists of what elements it captures and arranges in every composition, in every shot. And of course, the way those shots are written, performed, juxtaposed, sound designed, and sequenced also forms this common so-called camera narration. So maybe it would be more accurate to say, in every movie, the filmmakers and their creative techniques are the primary narrator. It's just a little more streamlined to think of all that as the camera. But the camera isn't always a movie's only narrator. Some movies use more than one narrator to deliver the narration. This narration can be in the form of a character's particular perspective on the narrative's events. A first-person narrator is a character in the narrative who typically imparts information in the form of voice-over narration, which is when we hear a character's voice over the picture without actually seeing the character speak the words. This technique allows us to hear one narration from the first-person character narrator while simultaneously watching the narration provided by our narrator camera. The combination allows us an even richer experience of the narrative. The short film Spam Coup uses this dual-layered approach.
I wouldn't call myself a loser. I'm more of a non-winner. Non-winners are always looking for a sign that their luck will change. It's human nature to hope for a little luck. Unfortunately, whether it's good luck or bad luck is always determined in hindsight. This letter was an obvious sign. Congratulations, it said. In 2 weeks, you will receive a lifetime of spam. Indeed, my luck had changed.
Of course, having a character within the story acknowledge and address the audience from a position outside the events on screen is a bit of an artifice we must accept in order to enjoy this narrative richness. And some movies push this idea even farther. These films don't limit the first-person narrative to voice-over narration. Instead, the first-person narrator character interrupts the narrative to address narration directly to the audience. Sometimes the narrator isn't even someone in the movie. Voice-over narration can be expressed by a voice imposed from outside of the narrative. The third-person narrator provides narration that illuminates the narrative in different ways than narration coming from a narrator who is also a participant in the narrative. The short film Death to the Tin Man uses this third-person voice-over narration.
Bill was the town pariah, the most hated man in a 20-mile radius. The reasons for this were unclear. Maybe it was because he spent his youth in and out of jail. Maybe it was because he fought and drank and used the Lord's name in vain without remorse. Maybe it was because he was the greatest firefighter the town had ever seen. So brave, he made the others look like cowards.
Again, two narrators provide the narration, the camera and everything that implies, and the third-person voiceover. The movie trailer parody, The Big Charade, employs all three forms of narration. The camera tells us its version of the story throughout.
Novel, 2 words.
What's that, Russ?
Ulysses.
The protagonist also narrates portions of the story in a first-person voiceover.
He taught me everything I knew about the game. He was good. Some say he was too good.
Papa, who did this? Sounds like what? 2 words?
And a third-person narrator chimes in, growling in the overwrought style we associate with movie previews.
In a world where nothing is what it seems, comes an extraordinary tale.
You're not from around here, are you?
You know where I can pick up a game of charades in this town?
You play?
Of a game where nothing is what it appears to be.
So we have a number of possible narrators, even combinations of narrators. Likewise, there is more than one approach to narration. Narration can be omniscient, meaning it knows all and can tell us whatever it wants us to know. Omniscient narration has unrestricted access to all aspects of the narrative. It can provide any character's experiences and perceptions, as well as information that no character is aware of. Restricted narration is limited to only the events and insights available to a single character. In other words, we, the audience, know only what that character is capable of knowing. The Big Charade uses 3 forms of narrators, but essentially only one form of narration. And outside of the third-person voiceover narrator's occasional provocative commentary, every moment we see and every word we hear represents the thoughts, memories, perspectives, and experiences of the protagonist. This approach to narration serves the narrative. The Big Charade suggests a mystery thriller story. A significant portion of our enjoyment of this kind of narrative depends on identifying with the protagonist's perspective on sometimes perplexing and frightening events and participating with the character in the gradual unlocking of the narrative's secrets. The Limey, a feature-length mystery thriller directed by Steven Soderbergh, uses a similar approach. For most of the film, the camera narrator restricts the narration. We see and hear only the thoughts, memories, perspectives, and experiences available to our protagonist, Wilson, as he doggedly pursues the mystery behind the death of his daughter. In fact, as the narrative progresses, the viewer gradually realizes that the movie's highly stylized editing is not conveying the story events as they happened, but as they are recalled and perhaps imagined by Wilson on his way back to England after the mystery has been solved. It's a sort of visual first-person narration without the voiceover. But the Limey does not limit itself to restricted narration. At times, the narrative demands that we, in the audience, know things that Wilson does not. So the narration temporarily shifts into omniscient mode, revealing events and interactions that Wilson could not have experienced. These sections are cut in a different style to suggest the narration shift. On the other hand, movies like Jean-Pierre Gene's Amélie thoroughly embrace omniscient narration. A third-person voiceover narrator and an omniscient camera guide us through unrestricted access to the thoughts, memories, perspectives, and experiences of multiple characters. The deeper you look, the more complex and expressive cinema gets. But the general concepts at the foundation of cinematic storytelling are pretty straightforward. Just remember, the narrative is the story. Narration is the act of telling the story. The narrator is who or what tells the story. Take it from me, your humble voiceover narrator.